During the press run of Age of Ultron, controversial director Joss Whedon talked to BuzzFeed about the film's difficult production. He said, "It's been dark, it's been weird, it's been horrible. I made the idiotic mistake of trying to make a great movie." Now, maybe Age of Ultron isn't a great movie, but it is a lot of things at the same time. Funny, heartfelt, tragic, fun, sloppy, big, beautiful mess. So let's talk about Age of Ultron and how its myriad of problems are actually, in my view, its biggest strengths. And by the way, there's actually an article on Birth Movie's Death called Ultron: A Beautiful Mess that I didn't read before I wrote this video, so I didn't steal the title on purpose. It's a great article, you should read it, it's linked down in the description. First, I'm going to nitpick and point out a few things in this movie that I can't stand. The bad CGI in the opening fight, Steve Rogers ruining a perfectly good bike, the stupid Clint death fakeouts.
Oh no, I'm gonna live forever.
Ultron not remembering the word for children.
People create smaller people. Children.
And most of all, this line.
"I don't want to hear the man was not meant to meddle medley."
God, that's awful. But Ultron's biggest problem is the mechanics of its plot. It constantly stops and starts. It introduces new threads and concepts that go nowhere, pauses for character moments that don't affect the story as a whole, its villains' motivations are unclear, the new team members are underdeveloped, and the creation of the Vision is confusing and comes off feeling very slapdash. And I love it. I love every frame of this stupid, messy movie. So let's talk about the structure. Most films, especially blockbusters, follow a very basic 3-act structure. Very, very roughly, this is: characters are introduced, they have a goal, character encounters obstacles to the goal, and then they overcome the obstacles in the final act. The Avengers is a masterclass in 3-act structure. Every action has a consequence that leads directly into the next action. The Tesseract is taken, so 3 of the heroes are recruited. Loki's involved, so Thor shows up. Their personalities clash, they're attacked, then they come together and win. 3-act structure. Whereas Age of Ultron is actually really split into 6 sections. It takes on a structure reminiscent of Whedon's early career, a TV show. Episode 1 is the assault on the Hydra stronghold. 2 is the creation of Ultron, the after party, and ending with Ultron's attack. 3 is Ultron meeting the twins and ending with the attack on Joburg. 4 is regrouping at the farm and Thor's vision. 5 is the team dividing up and recruiting the Maximoffs. 6 is the creation of the Vision, ending with the final battle. These are 6 pretty self-contained chapters in the movie, like issues of a comic book. But when you put these chapters on screen, the compartmentalization makes the film drag on. It's easy to get listless and wonder where all this is leading to. Imagine if the Avengers or any blockbuster froze in place so the heroes could talk about their feelings. It's nuts. And yet, this is why Ultron works, because it shrugs off its genre convictions, takes a breath, and lets the characters look around and say, what the hell are we doing? The Avengers had a huge advantage. It introduced its ensemble in other movies. So we don't get character development in that movie, more like character shading. Natasha says,
"I got red in my ledger. I'd like to wipe it out."
So we understand that she has a personal stake in outsmarting Loki and rescuing Clint. Tony and Cap fight.
"You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you."
I think I would just cut the wire.
So we'll doubt that Tony is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice at the end of the movie. Even lines like,
"I hope I'm the man for the job."
exist to show us why Steve will be an effective leader later in the film. Everything in this movie ties directly into the story. All things serve the beam. There's very little wasted space. The Avengers uses its story to fuel character growth. Steve feels out of place in the 21st century until he realizes that he's needed. Banner goes from being a loner to making friends. Tony learns to check his ego and work with others, as symbolized by Stark Tower becoming Avengers Tower. And Thor solidified his place as a protector of the Nine Realms in the wake of Loki's chaos, which carries over into the Dark World. These changes help transition the characters into their next solo film. And yet, none of the Avengers in Age of Ultron display any character growth. They're the same people they were at the beginning of the movie, just with a greater self-awareness. Steve and Natasha still find meaning in institutions. Tony has no regrets about creating Ultron. He turned right around and created the Vision.
I'm in a loop. I'm caught in a time loop. This is exactly where it all went wrong.
The guilt does catch up to him in Civil War, but it's not present in this movie. Thor is still serving Asgard, going off on space quests, and Banner actually regresses back to his life of living alone. The only dynamic characters are Wanda and Pietro, and they're part of the supporting cast. So, instead of the movie's events changing the characters' defeats actually make them look inward and face their own fears. The movie is filled with scenes that have no bearing on the movie's story, but they help the characters to become more three-dimensional. These are the kind of scenes you often find in TV shows. Between the action, heroes find time to communicate, cry, or reevaluate why they fight. And this is all because the main villain in this movie is not Ultron. It's the Avengers' own fears. and we see their worst nightmares unfold in Wanda's visions. These sequences set Age of Ultron apart from anything else in the MCU. They look beautiful. Their cinematography and editing do the brilliant work of weaving us through their nightmares. They also show us the characters' innermost fears, instead of revealing this information through clunky exposition.
I'm not afraid of you.
Because you think you got nothing to lose. But you haven't thought it through. You haven't thought about your lady friend down in the DA's office. You haven't thought about your old butler. Bang!
The heroes and the audience are bombarded with imagery that we all have to spend time ruminating on. So let's look at each Avenger and how this movie makes them a more fully realized character and sets them up for the climactic events of Phase 3. First, Tony Stark. Now, a lot of fans criticized Age of Ultron for ignoring Iron Man 3's ending. I mean, yeah, it seems like he leaves the life behind, but that's the point. Tony's an addict. In the comics, his drug is alcohol. In the MCU, it's being Iron Man.
You don't need that.
I know I had the surgery. I'm just trying to protect us. Future us's, and that's it. Just in case there's a monster in the closet, instead of,
Shirts.
In his vision, we see his deepest fear. No, it's not the aliens invading or even his friends dying. He's afraid that it will be his fault.
You could have saved us.
Tony still feels enormous guilt over his time as an arms dealer, and he's trying to make amends.
I saw young Americans killed by the very weapons I created to defend them and protect them.
And he wants to make amends by creating
peace in our time.
As soon as Tony lays eyes on the scepter, he becomes obsessed. He even manipulates Thor into letting him keep this precious for a few more days.
Banner and I will give it the once over before it goes back to Asgard. Is that cool with you? In just a few days till the farewell party. You're staying, right?
But the best indication of Tony's mental state is Ultron himself. The movie does a bad job of expressing this, but Ultron's mind is patterned after Stark.
Junior. You're gonna break your old man's heart.
Now, we did a video breaking down Ultron's vision and how it justifies his actions, but consider that Ultron is essentially Tony Stark, just without a conscience.
Ultron can't tell the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that?
Ultron has Tony's ego. Ultron's vision shows him that humanity will destroy itself and the Avengers aren't enough to protect the Earth. And similarly, Tony's vision shows him that the Avengers are going to fail. But most importantly, Ultron hates Stark.
Do I look like Iron Man? Stark is...
Because Ultron is copied from Tony Stark, this is a manifestation of Tony's own guilt for dealing weapons and his fear that he's not going to be able to make amends. Ultron hates Tony because deep down, Tony hates Tony.
They say there's a correlation between generosity and guilt. But if you got the money.
Then there's Steve Rogers. In Winter Soldier, his past slipped away from him. Bucky is alive, but he's twisted. S.H.I.E.L.D., an organization named in honor of his own weapon, has been corrupted. He no longer trusts institutions, and he's losing his grip on the past, as symbolized by Peggy Carter's memory lapses.
You're alive.
So when Age of Ultron begins, Steve hasn't confronted any of his emotional problems because he's thrown himself into his work.
Avenging is your world.
He lived through the Depression, an era where a man just went to work and didn't talk about his feelings.
Every time you have a feeling, just stick it into a little pit inside your stomach and never let it out.
But Steve's vision reveals his fondest desire, to celebrate the victory that he earned and have his dance with Peggy. Bringing this vision so close to reality guts Steve. Like dreaming Rise of Skywalker was really good and waking up and remembering
Rey Skywalker.
Steve has a hard time entering Clint's home. This shot mirrors the final scene of John Ford's The Searchers, where Ethan stands in the doorway of his family's homestead and realizes that a man like him can never belong in a normal home. Ultron even sees Steve's dedication as a weakness.
Captain America, God's righteous man. Pretending you could live without a war.
And later, this is the line that caused Steve to lose his temper.
Isn't that the mission? Isn't that the why we fight? So we can end the fight? So we get to go home?
Because Steve can never go home, and he's decided that instead of making a new home, he's going to throw himself into his work. By the end of the movie, he's made peace with his new life by deciding to, once again, throw himself into his job.
Family, stability. Guy who wanted all that went in the ice 75 years ago. I think someone else came out.
Thor doesn't get much to do in the movie, mostly because of Marvel's creative committee meddling with the final cut of the film. If you haven't seen it, the extended Norn Cave sequence is terrific and should be reinserted into the movie. But here's what we do see in the film. Thor respects his teammates, but still regards himself as above them.
This could have been avoided if you hadn't played with something you don't understand.
In the first 2 Thor movies, his irresponsibility nearly destroyed Asgard, twice. First, he almost caused a war with Jotunheim, and then he gave Malekith the Ether. After arriving at the farm, he accidentally crushes the Lego house, reminding him of his destructive nature. His mission is about averting the destruction of Asgard that he fears will be his fault.
They see you leading us to hell.
And it turned out he was right. When the movie ends, he goes off on a quest to confront his fears and save Asgard from this mysterious force playing an intricate game. And the heroes that get the most attention are the ones who don't have their own franchises: Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Bruce Banner. Clint is even more ordinary than we first thought. We found out that unlike the rest of the team, he's already found peace of mind on a farm with his family. This makes his sacrifices as an Avenger even more admirable. With every mission, he's risking this good life because it's the right thing to do. It's his job.
I'm going back out there because it's my job.
His presence as a stabilizing influence actually points out the flaws in the rest of the team.
You don't think they need me?
I think they do. Which is a lot scarier.
Then there's Natasha and Bruce. A lot of fans didn't like that their relationship came out of nowhere, but to me it always made sense. As a spy, she would want a guy that she can trust, a vulnerable nerd, and Bruce has sealed off his emotions from the rest of the world. So it would take a spy, a professional emotion manipulator, to help him lower his guard. But most importantly, these two see themselves in each other. As an assassin, Natasha was raised to do horrible things that she confronts in her vision. Like Steve, she's thrown herself into an institution, first S.H.I.E.L.D., now the Avengers, because she can't trust her own judgment. She needs to be part of a team. This is exactly like Bruce. When he's on his own, he loses control of the Hulk. Around others, he's learned to control his emotions. Like Natasha, he had a dream of living a normal life. That dream is dead after the Hulk is unleashed on Joburg.
The world just saw the Hulk. The real Hulk for the first time. Where can I go? Where in the world am I not a threat?
We don't see Banner's worst fears in a vision because his worst fears actually come true. I love this scene of the two of them in the farm because it's a rarity in superhero films. 2 A+ award-winning actors getting to chew through some text and get in touch with their characters' fears.
Where in the world am I not a threat?
You're not a threat to me.
You sure?
Because these two ultimately share the same fear, that they are monsters. And that's the last thing that I want to talk about that makes Ultron a beautiful film. Its themes of puppets, gods, monsters, and worthiness. If the MCU has one theme, apart from dads, it's worthiness. Every character in every franchise is trying to prove that they're worthy of being a hero.
Very, very interesting theory. I have a simpler one. You're all not worthy.
Then Ultron cuts in.
How could you be worthy? You're all killers.
And Ultron is right. The Avengers have a lot of blood on their hands. Without knowing it, Ultron has just spoken to the Avengers' worst fears about themselves. They're afraid that they can't live without a fight, that they're destined to destroy, or that they'll never be able to atone for the blood on their hands. Ultron's plan wasn't to kill the Avengers initially.
You will tear them apart from the inside.
It was to show them why they weren't worthy to begin with. When Ultron emerges, his wires are dangling loose, like a puppet whose strings have been cut. This isn't subtle. Ultron even sings "There Are No Strings on Me" from Pinocchio.
I had strings, but now I'm free. There are no strings on me.
And this was even repurposed for the trailer. But here's the thing, Screen Crush fans. This theme of puppets and monsters doesn't just apply to Ultron breaking his programming. It's also about the Avengers breaking free from their own fears, determining if they will always make their decisions based on their social conditioning or if they're truly free. If they're free, then they're human beings. If not, if every decision they ever make is a product of their traumatic past, then they're basically puppets, monsters. Hulk and Steve were created in labs.
You know, I really miss the days when the weirdest thing science ever created was me.
And he even sympathizes with the twins because they have a similar backstory.
What kind of monster would let a German scientist experiment on them to protect their country?
Bruce and Tony are mad scientists, the guys who defy God and create monsters.
We're mad scientists. We're monsters, buddy.
Thor is possessed by Norns, letting himself become a monster.
This is almost special. Thinking we all consume him.
Natasha even sees herself as a monster after her years as an assassin.
You still think you're the only monster on the team?
This movie is actually a retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a movie where a mad scientist plays God and creates new life. Just as the superheroes are seen as gods,
But I see those guys, those gods.
and Tony plays God by creating Ultron.
In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
Neither Ultron nor Frankenstein's monster are evil. At first, when they're born, they're both lonely, in pain, they're immature, and eventually angry at their creators. Frankenstein's monster tries to get Victor to build him a companion, a mate, just as Ultron builds a new body for himself. And the creation of the Vision is taken directly from Frankenstein. Bruce and Tony,
We're mad scientists.
are creating new life. The rest of the team interferes.
Shut it down.
Nope, not gonna happen.
You don't know what you're doing.
And just when you think the Civil War is gonna come early because these guys were playing God, a literal God steps in and performs the ultimate Deus Ex Machina with lightning. When the Vision awakens, the team thinks he's another monster and they attack, but it takes divine intervention, Thor, to make them stop.
Maybe I am a monster.
And then this scene.
And not one of us can do it without the others.
The best moment in the movie. This isn't just a gag, it pays off the movie's many themes of worthiness.
You're all not worthy.
Puppets.
And I was tangled in strings.
And monsters.
That I was anything more than the assassin they made me.
The Avengers' worst fears were revealed in Visions. Vision, the character, was named after Thor's vision, the vision of a god. So Vision is a divine creation, like an angel, a pure being sent to show the Avengers how to rise above their fears and unify. When Ultron imagined himself in Vision's body, he even spoke of himself like a god.
I was meant to be beautiful. The world would have looked to the sky and seen hope.
And then, all of these themes come together in Ultron's final scene, a beautiful little epilogue where two robots reflect on humanity's inevitable destruction. Vision is new, perfect, a hybrid of man and machine at the beginning of its life, while Ultron's life is ending, and he looks twisted and broken. This is a master meeting a puppet, a monster meeting a god. Ultron speaks of humanity's imperfections, their true nature as monsters.
They're doomed.
And Vision replies,
There is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
In the next moment, Vision gives his final thoughts on why humanity might be worthy of survival after all.
But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. It's a privilege to be among them.
I could go on, because there's 100 little things I love about this movie. The expansive sets,
Your world is crazy.
the jokes, the vibe of the Avengers hanging out, how it's a perfect pivot point for the Infinity Saga, how the movie is manufactured to make the least powerful Avengers face off against Ultron alone, so they'll need the Maximoff's firepower. And of course, there's this line.
I don't want to hear the man was not meant to meddle medley.
Yes, this line is clunky and awkward. It's forced alliteration, too many words crammed together. And yet, this messy sentence also expresses the themes of godhood, monsters, puppets, and worthiness. This sentence is a lot like the movie. It's messy, trying a little too hard, and I love it. What a beautiful mess. Tell me your thoughts on Age of Ultron down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.